You know, they're just. Yeah. Probably. Follow around. I'm not gonna, city gates, city charters.
I did.
Welcome. This service is provided by. If you are the host, press star now. Otherwise, please wait, and you will be joined into the conference.
My favorite elevator music.
I know, just kind of gel.
So what? They have located Greensboro Academy, right? Oh, why do they have old Greensboro? We have this records.
Okay, we're ready.
Chairman,
Start.
quickly,
We're ready.
before we get started, I want to let the CSAB know that yesterday was Keebler's birthday. Wish her a happy birthday.
Who sings really well? Sing to Keebler.
Happy
not me, Keebler.
birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Keebler. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you very much.
How old?
29.
Don't you dare do that. I'll kick him under the table.
Your leg's not that long.
You don't know about that. Women can do many things.
All right, we're ready. Let's get back to business here.
Okay. Board members, the next applicant group to appear before you represents City Charter Academy. They are proposing to locate in Guilford County. Their proposed enrollment follows. In year one, they expect 520 students in grades K through 5. In year two, 604 students in grades K through 6. In year three, 688 students in grades K through 7. In year 4 and beyond, at capacity, 772 students in grades K through 8. The LEA has not submitted an impact statement and no due diligence has been requested. This applicant group is requesting replication. They are not a repeat applicant. They are partnering with NHA. The application has been deemed complete.
Who's leading?
Who's leading this one?
You are.
Okay, I'm leading this one. Okay, I wasn't sure if I was leading this one. All right, we're ready to hear from, just introduce yourselves and we'll go ahead and get started.
Great. My name is Jeff Hyde. I am a 26-year resident of Greensboro, North Carolina. My wife and I met there 26 years ago. Neither of us from Greensboro, but we've just celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary and still in the same house. So we're permanent in the community. I am the current president and the founder, or one of the founders, of Gate City Charter Academy, which when we first came before you, we were Gateway. And we changed our name because of our location, because there's a Gateway school very close to where we ended up being located. So I'm addressing that just because it was addressed earlier there. We're called City Charter Academy, and we plan to replicate. We're associating with National Heritage Academies, and we plan to replicate Greensboro Academy, which is a stellar school. It happens to be located in our county along with two other NHA schools that are also on their path to becoming a stellar school. I'd like to introduce our board. We're going to start with Mark Popple here, and they'll just say a word.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Thank you for your time today. My name is Mark Pop. Not being from Greensboro originally, I take great pride in seeing the changes that Greensboro has made over the 20 years that I've been there. I've seen the great city continue to grow, new citizens and businesses seemingly pop up daily. I've been a part of the business community, operating a number of businesses in town since the time that I arrived. When I was first approached about joining this board, I reflected on what I would bring to the table and why I should join. As a business operator with a strong background of oversight and operational control, I felt I could lend a natural, critical eye and commitment to the client, that being the students and families of our targeted neighbors in Greensboro. As to why, it came down to feeling inspiration. I found myself inspired by the other folks on the board. With meeting with them, the passion that they displayed, beginning and end of every meeting, we reflected on why we wanted to do it, and it was noble in what they decided. I was inspired with meeting with the representatives of NHA. Never having been involved with anything like this, it was incredible to see their passion and their commitment to the students. I was inspired by my 3 little nieces and nephews, who are all going to go to kindergarten next year for the first time. And when I talked to their parents, my brothers-in-law and sisters-in-laws, they all expressed concerns of the local schools. And when I told them what I was interested in doing, they expressed a desire for choice as well. And lastly, I find myself inspired about what additional school choice will mean to the citizens of Greensboro, the families and neighbors that will benefit from better prepared citizens. Any role that I can help fulfill is time worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Next, we have Doris Gadet.
Good afternoon. My name is Doris Gadet. I am a senior financial analyst for the city of High Point. And I have been in Greensboro for 25 years. I went to college there. And I am passionate about this board and serving the community of Greensboro. I was one of those 1,000 children that grew up in an area where I did not have the option to choose. And also now my kids are students at Northwest Guilford High School, and I had to relocate to that area in order to get the best education for my kids at the time, because there was not a school in the area, a charter school or any other schools in the area where I lived, and that was approximately, a mile down the street in order to get them the best education. They're doing well, however, with being a part of a charter school, it would have given them more opportunities. So I'm very passionate about this and pushing forth with more opportunities for kids. Thank you.
And then we also have Mike Steinbach.
Good afternoon. I hope you're all doing well. Thank you for your time here today. Quite frankly, I'm passionate about kids, and I'm passionate about education. I am a parent of 2 children at Greensboro Academy Charter, and I see what the moral focus-based curriculum does for the student body, because I also coached the middle school basketball team. And in 8 years, I've never had one cuss word, one argument, fight, disagreement. And I see what that does, and it resonates throughout the whole student body from kindergarten through 8th grade. So that being said, my mission was to help some of these children, because when we got in that lottery, it was a lot of parents kept celebrating us, but that feeling of guilt that there's thousands, literally thousands of others not having that same opportunity, it was a level of guilt. So the reason I want to serve, I also serve as a board member on Piedmont Classical Charter High School, which doesn't have NHA as a parent company, and I can assure you I've seen that side and realize the importance of NHA being behind a charter school. So I will also be serving on this board and realize how excited and professional this organization is, and the importance that this school would bring to the inner city of Greensboro, North Carolina, where it is highly needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And Jeff Phillips, who joined me, or I joined him with the foundation of Gate City Charter Academy, is not here. He's in Oklahoma. Won't be here today, but he submitted a letter. It's in your portal, but Doris is going to read a portion of that to you, if you don't mind.
Jeff had so kindly remarks of saying that it has been a distinct honor for us to partner with National Heritage Academies over the past several years, as together we continue to pursue more school choice opportunities on behalf of the less fortunate and oftentimes undeserved children in East Greensboro area of our city. It is my personal passion to continue our efforts aggressively forward in pursuit of more and, frankly, better school choices for families residing within these communities. Many of these families we intend to serve, unfortunately, when faced with no other options, often have very little means to relocate in the pursuit of better educational alternatives for their children. The future of these kids and their families is clearly hanging in the balance. But with your approval today, the potential for life-changing success in the lives of every child we are blessed to serve will be greatly appreciated and enhanced. Thank you.
Okay, and that's our board, and we're very proud of our board. We do anticipate, before we open, expanding our board to 7 members. We've been successful with that at Gate City Charter, expanding our board, and 7 seems to be a good number. I want to address quickly just some themes that I saw in the other interviews earlier today, and just go ahead and address a few of those. We want to put our school in an area of Guilford County that doesn't have a lot of options. Kids, the families in East Greensboro the schools that they're surrounded by are failing or D-level schools, been there historically forever. Some of them recently were destroyed by a tornado that came through 2 years ago and have been closed down. There's a big study going on with Guilford County Schools about closing, reopening, demolishing, rebuilding schools in Guilford County. That's a $2 billion project that's probably going to take 10 to 15 years. That's a whole generation of our kids that won't be able to take advantage of those. You had asked a previous board why they were choosing to replicate Wake Forest Charter Academy instead of another school, and we've chosen to replicate Greensboro Academy. And who wouldn't? It is a star in the NHA portfolio of schools. It is a star performer in Guilford County and in the state of North Carolina. There are 2 other schools that also duplicated or replicated Greensboro Academy. Gate City Charter, where I'm the president, and also Summerfield Academy. And they're both under the NHA model, and both of those schools, although they're younger than Greensboro Academy, are on their way to obtaining the same type of status and performance levels that Greensboro Academy is. So that's why we chose to do that as opposed to Gate City Charter. But let me tell you about Gate City Charter. Our school is in our 4th year. We were denied the first time we came before you in our application, and it just made us more determined because of what we wanted to do. We don't want to be located just somewhere in the county and hope that kids come. We want to be in the heart of where there is the most need, and that's what's happened. We don't provide busing. Transportation has never been an issue for us. Our parents choose to come to our school, and we have a 94% minority population in the 700 kids that we've got now. Carpool line runs great. We've got after-school programs for for families that work and can't pick up at 3 o'clock. All of those things seem to work really well at Gate City. And our progress, we've attained growth every year. Our progress, we moved proficiency up to a C in our 2nd year. We dropped down this past year, but we did an analysis of the kids who started out with us, who have been at the Gate City Charter for the last 3 years, and those children are performing at 10% or 15% higher in math, science, and reading than our other population. So what we know about that is that our system, the organization, our curriculum, and the talent level we've got in our teachers is working with those kids. And we just need kids to stay with us a little bit longer and get them up there. So that answered the replication. I also want to address innovation. You heard in the previous interview from Lori Hill, who is the director of school quality, the chief academic officer for our school. about the curriculum that we offer. And our hands are tied because, you know, we have to, you know, adhere to North Carolina curriculum standards. So to a certain level, this is what we have to teach. But you know that we are working on different things so that our kids can learn those subjects and those methods in a better method. So I just want to address that, and we're glad to take any questions. We thank you for the opportunity to be before you today. We'd like to not come back. We'd like to be to be approved now, but if we do have to come back, we will. We're determined to have another school, a successful school in East Greensboro. So thank you.
So you will chair both boards, is that right?
No. Both Jeff Phillips and I, Jeff Phillips is not here, we are both beginning members of the Gate City Charter Academy, and we're currently both still on the board. I'm currently the president of the Gate City Charter Board, and my intention, and I'll need to clear this up, I talked to Dr. Williams about this, in our first clarification interview, that report back said that I would step off of one of the boards, and that's not my intention. My intention is to be on both boards, but I would step away from being an officer at Gate City.
Okay.
We currently do not have officers selected. I'm the lead applicant, but we have not elected officers on our board.
Are the other, no other board members besides Jeff Phillips are on the Gate City Board, is that correct?
That's correct.
What has been, what would you describe as a value add that NHA brings to the table? Kind of, and what have you learned from working with them?
Well, I think Mike can answer that because he's a 9-year parent of 2 Greensboro Academy boys. I'll fill in.
Could you repeat that question, please?
I just, I'm interested in, what has been the value add and benefit of working with NHA? What have you learned from that process?
Well, that's a great question, and if we had more time, I could spend countless hours about the benefits of NHA. First of all, with Piedmont Classical, I noticed Piedmont Classical is a charter high school in Guilford County that does not have a parent company like NHA, and it's a struggle. It's a constant struggle. So from an organizational standpoint, NHA is a huge asset. From a financial standpoint, it's even a bigger asset. It's a safety net that is provided that, quite frankly, eliminates the risk of failure. And most importantly, NHA brings a moral-based ethical component to education that when those students leave in 8th grade, I know from a high school perspective, each high school craves Greensboro Academy and Summerfield Academy, and after this year, Gate City Academy students crave them. They want them. I hear it every day when I walk into a Piedmont Classical meeting. I want as many Greensboro Academy kids as you can send over here. And it's because they're not behavioral issues, they're high-level academics, and the NHA provides just a wonderful environment for kids to learn. And that's what this is all about.
Thanks, Mike. I'll say, as my experience on the Gate City Charter Board, that NHA's biggest asset is, of course, their expertise. They are very good across the board in every aspect of running a school and offer great advice and counseling to any issues that come up. They are, obviously from their track record, just a credible partner to be associated with, and we're glad that we're hooked up with them. Would you want me to be more specific?
Yeah, I mean, so at a board meeting, what role does NHA play at a board meeting? Do they provide you with data? Do they, do they attend all the meetings? Like, help us understand a little bit.
Right, sure. At a Gate City Board meeting, and I assume that it happens at all the 13 other NHA schools in the state, we have a National Heritage North Carolina advocate that comes to all of our meetings, an employee of NHA that's our liaison to NHA. And they come to all of our meetings. All of our data and all of the information academically and otherwise about the school comes from our principal. They give a principal's report about the upcoming calendar, about issues with parents, about where we are as far as scores and performance, about our recent testing, because we do a whole lot of testing, not just end of the year, but throughout the year, periodic checks on our kids. And our principal at Gate City, Dr. Natasha Brown, delivers that. Dr. Natasha Robertson, delivers that every meeting.
Okay. I mean,
Currently, we are in constant, as the president, as a board, the board is not in constant contact with NHA or the principal. But as the president, I am. And so any issue that comes up, any concern, or any praise or celebration that we have, I hear about it on a regular basis.
okay. Do you have any concerns about oversaturation or competition with other? You have Gate City, Gate City,
right.
like City Charter, Gate City.
Which is right there in that same.
Guilford Prep. Seems like we would. I know there's 70,000 students in Greensboro, but we've seen even in populous areas, schools struggle to fill the seats. What does that look like at Gate City? What's the wait list there, if any?
Yeah, we at Gate City Charter, we have a short wait list at this time. But in March, when we had our lottery, we had over 400 kids on our wait list and tiers in the people that were rejected and didn't get in at that time. We do know that the elementary schools that are in our area are schools that parents are concerned about their kids and would like to have other options. We know that. I don't have any doubt whatsoever that we can fill our spaces. At Gate City, there are a few holes that we have as far as grades, but this is our first year of 8th grade, so we have a smaller 8th grade class than we would like. We also have a smaller 5th grade class than we'd like, but we are over committed in kindergarten through 4th grade. So as we grow and get some tenure there, that's attendance. Our population is going to reach the max, and the population we're asking for here is not our break-even point. It's what we have the maximum capacity to serve.
Is it true that you only surveyed the families on the wait list of the other NHA schools in Guilford County?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Your survey, did you only survey the families that were on the wait list of other NHA schools in the county? Or did your survey go out to the whole blue area?
Just a minute. I'm sorry. The survey went out to waitlist students in any NHA school.
So, well, for me, that's problematic because you didn't survey the people in the area.
Yeah. So Charlize just clarified this, that our survey went out to any families that were on a wait list in Guilford County on an NHA partner school. So Summerfield Academy, Greensboro Academy, Gate City Academy.
But why not to the whole area that you're anticipating putting a school? In other words, if my child's not on a wait list somewhere, I didn't get a survey to say that I'm interested within the county.
Oh, I can guarantee you that if we are approved a charter, we'll be in contact with every family in that area because our goal is to have a full class. So
I guess my concern is is there, I want to believe that the answer is yes, there is a need for a school, but I don't want the need for the school to be based solely on the fact that NHA's other schools have long waiting lists.
Oh,
That's my concern.
2 years ago, a tornado came in the spring in Guilford County. The tornado tore up Hampton Elementary School right in our area. It tore up Bessemer Elementary School right in our area. Those kids that were in those schools got relocated to other Guilford County schools to finish out that year. And those schools, those kids are now being bused to another school that's outside of their neighborhood. Both of those schools, Bessemer and Hampton, were failing schools. They are then bused into another underperforming school. Those parents want choice. I guarantee, when we opened up in Gate City, we had no presence in East Greensboro. The only presence when we got our charter, Summerfield Academy wasn't even open. So there was no, in the area where we're looking at locating, it is a high poverty area, it is a high minority area, and every school there underperforms the county levels, which underperform the state levels. So it's a problem area. Any parent would want their kids to go to a better school.
And that's more the answer that I was hoping for, that these are kids that are underserved, and that's what you guys are seeking to rectify. So that's what I was looking for.
Exactly right. We sent out, let me look. Up here. Cesar Cone Elementary School is a school in our area, and it's an F or a D minus. I'm not sure what it is this year. Irwin Montessori is a school of choice, and it is a C minus. But it's a choice school, so kids have to apply and be accepted there.
There's no such thing as a C minus.
I guess it's just a low C.
Okay, it's a C. I'm sorry.
C would not
Aycock Middle
met
School
growth.
is an underperforming school. Bessemer is a school that's now closed, got hit by the tornado. Brightwood Elementary School, the last I looked at, which was 2 years ago, was an F. Anyway, there's a need.
Let me just ask, the reason you surveyed the waiting list was just to get a survey done. You really haven't surveyed the area,
That's correct.
but you know the need is there based upon what you
I
said.
just want to clarify this for the record
Sure.
because I think if I was a traditional school if it's reported that someone was just stating something without it being accurate, I just
Sure,
want
I'd like to be
careful.
accurate.
Brightwood last year was a D in Met Growth. The other school that you mentioned was C minus, was a C in Met Growth. I don't think you named another score. If someone was in a state board meeting saying such and such, that was not, we want to just make sure that it's clear what those schools were.
2018-19, I didn't put a spreadsheet together, but I did put one for 17-18. And so this fall, when those grades came out, I don't even know if all of those are public knowledge or not. But yes, all of the area, the point, and I'm sorry I get excited about it because if you drive through East Greensboro, if you go to one of these schools that are currently operating, if you talk to a parent in East Greensboro, there's a need.
Can we talk to the representative from NHA real quick?
Sure.
Alex?
Yeah.
And this will probably be for the board chair once you talk, but I just kind of need a clarification to make sure that that you're not only taking kids from your other wait list, that this is open to all children.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, I guess I'm curious. Does NHA kind of look at how do you strategically? Part of what I'm wondering is, NHA generally is probably, they're a corporation. They're not going to put a school in a place that they don't think that they're going to get the students. what type of analysis do you do internally to decide? You know, if you had sure, you have a engaged and excited board chair that says, you know, we need another school.
Step one, right?
Yeah, I mean, what steps do you take to really assess whether or not that's a viable business
Yeah.
proposition? Because that's ultimately part of what it is. You know, we need to call it what it is.
So certainly looking at the population density of the area, do we have a track record of success in that area? Does there seem to be a need at our partner schools that are there with more parents wanting to come to an NHA school than we can handle? And in this case, yes, and it doesn't always translate. I know when Summerfield was opened, there was an expectation that perhaps a lot of the folks that were waitlisted on Greensboro would come there, and that actually didn't pan out to be true. So that was an interesting kind of a surprise when we first opened Summerfield.
Did Summerfield open at capacity?
No, they did not.
How
They've
did-
reached that. It took about maybe about 3 years to
Do
reach
you know
capacity.
how much below the original, approximately?
No, I don't. It's a little trickier to fill your sixth grade. And so that's what we would see is Summerfield was maxed K-5, and then it took us a while to build up that sixth, seventh, and eighth grade to finally have a full
Makes
eighth
sense.
grade. We've seen that at each of our schools that we've opened over the last 7 years.
When schools don't meet their numbers
Mm-hmm.
for enrollment, you know, you put a staffing plan in place with the principal, and then you have, you know, low enrollment in second grade or third grade. Are you cutting teachers? Are you combining classes? How does it work?
Yeah, we haven't. We actually ran into that issue at Preeminent, where we've had to have, it was 2 sections of sixth grade. We were seeing some of our fifth graders not stay and move into sixth grade. And so we, if at all possible, we were actually able to move that teacher to another position. In my tenure with, as director, we've never had to cut an employee because of a lower enrollment. We've always been able to move that person to another position.
Do you cut a class out though of the model,
ha-
or is it always the
We
same?
could, yeah, we could. We're looking at Gate City's enrolled, they're offered seats for next year. We're looking at that right now and saying, do we feel like we have enough fourth graders to fill 3 sections of fifth grade for next year? We'll look at historical data, we'll look at attrition or erosion, and then make that decision.
What's the class size minimum that the corporation is willing to tolerate?
For 3 sections, I think we look around 60. If we're at 60 kids, that's typically 2 sections unless we have historical data that shows otherwise, that no, we
So
anticipate.
you would do 2 classes of 30? Yeah,
If
with
we had
60.
to, we would hire additional paraprofessional support to staff those classes.
Okay,
We've never had to do that, though.
so you wouldn't go down to 3 classes of 20?
Not likely.
What's the kind of long-term plan for NHA? I mean, this is the second application today. You know, what is scale for the organization in the
North
state?
Carolina.
Like, what are we talking about?
I don't know if I know the answer to that.
Is there
How many do we
where's the
have?
person from Michigan?
We're trying to keep my head down in schools as much as possible.
Hi, my name is Jeff Ichesko. I work with NHA at the Service Center in Grand Rapids. There is no, confidently say there's no stated goal of NHA needs to get to a certain number. Is there a need first and foremost? And are there groups approaching us or folks being recommended to us that we should speak with about opening a school? So really there is no break-even point in our minds, and there's really no stated goal of any kind.
So there's no like strategic plan that says we would like to have 15 schools by.
No.
We thought we were done for a little while in North Carolina. It's been a busy few years. It's been exciting.
Do you do any kind of collaborative training with your principals in North Carolina?
Talking about my favorite topic. Yes, so with 13 principals in North Carolina, we meet monthly, so there's another director besides myself. And currently, we've done it a couple different ways. We've split east and west because our schools are from Charlotte to Greenville, North Carolina, basically the whole length of the state. But we bring all 13 principals together on a monthly basis, And then twice a year, we bring them together for 2 or 3 days to do some intense development. So we actually have them for 2 days at the end of this week. But they're a huge source of support for each other, especially our 5 principals that work with our higher poverty schools.
So facility-wise, who deals with that? Grand Rapids?
So we have not selected a site yet, and
Do you
we
have
won't.
to do that?
Excuse me?
Do you do that, or does NHA?
We work together. The, all the engineering and research comes out of Grand Rapids.
Okay.
And they are connected with developers in Guilford County, you know, to identify parcels, and we suggest, here's an area, please look at this. Could this be for sale? Could we bundle these lots together? I think this would be a great area. So we talk with them on a regular basis, but there is no plan that's concrete at this time to purchase some land until we actually get approved, and we won't do it until we get approved.
And what is their turnaround on, because if I'm not mistaken, NHA puts you in a new facility year 1. Is
That's
that correct? So.
And that has happened every year except one NHA school in North Carolina, I think down in the Charlotte area a few years ago, had to have a temporary building for whatever reason. I don't know. But we got approved with Gate City charter, and we opened up a year and a half later. And we did not purchase the land the 3 parcels that we had initially identified. We ended up with a different parcel.
And NHA, they own the building outright?
That's correct. We lease from them.
But you identify the property you want.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're a governing board. They act on our consent. So we have to approve wherever we go. We talked with Gate City, understand that where we want to go is in the densest part of Greensboro. So there aren't 15-acre tracts of woods sitting there for us to grab. So it's a chore to go in there and identify those parcels and what's going to be beneficial. And with the site that we had originally preferred as a board with Gate City, NHA, there were some issues with, what was it? It was a rock quarry. There was some water. I mean, we saw the land. Here it is. It's large enough. It's right in the target area. What about this? And they did the research and identified, here are the problems with that. And here's why the traffic pattern won't work. And here's what the water retention is. Here's the problem. So they do all that for us.
Yeah, I guess my concern is because it's so, I mean, we're talking about a relatively specific area, finding a piece of available property, and the proximity of the new school to the other schools, I guess is just a concern to me.
Yeah, well, if we wanted immediate success, we would locate within 2 miles between Summerfield and Greensboro Academy, because the demographic there is suburban white, and we would be an immediate success based on. But we have no interest in that. Our board wants to be in an area that is incredibly underserved at this time by the current lack of choice and the current performance of the local district schools.
I guess that's
and
my
we have a
question.
heart to that.
In that little blue area there, that the population is that dense that you would be able to pull those
Yeah,
kids.
it's like downtown Raleigh, downtown Durham, yes.
See, I'm from a very rural area, so I mean we're driving miles a day to pull kids in. So that's what just help me
So
understand.
when we first opened up Gate City, we thought we'd get some spillover from Greensboro Academy because their wait list was so large. We thought that would spill over. Well, it's 17 miles away.
17, okay.
So parents, don't want to drive that. We want to be close by.
All right. I mean, Any other questions?
The previous school we talked to, said that while transportation is not currently part of their plan, that if they were to get students to find out that they needed transportation, they would make that happen. Or is that your attitude as well?
Yeah, we've got a budget before you, and that budget is our best guess based on the experience level of these other schools and the 88 schools that NHA does. And we have allocated $10,000 for transportation, but we don't provide transportation. But we have that there as, if needed for a hardship or whatever. That budget, we've got a banker, an accountant, Jeff Phillips is a financial manager. We have people that deal with budgets all the time. And what we know about a budget is that we can change it and prioritize. I mean, it's just a list of things that we think are important and what we think we're going to spend money on. But we don't know 2 years away what we're going to spend the money on. But we do know that for the most part, we're counting on our parents to bring their kids too. If we're located in the right spot, most of them are going to walk.
Transportation would never be a barrier.
Yeah.
That's what we want to know.
It's just that if you start out, you may not ever know it was a barrier. If people's perception is, I have to be able to take my child to the school and I know that I can't do that, I won't ever show up. So it was a barrier, but you didn't even know it. So just being really sensitive to, as you're talking in the community to people, if you start hearing, well, I'd like to go, but I can't, that you are ready to rethink that.
So at Gate City Charter, the kids come from, we have some from Alamance County, we have some from Rockingham County that come down to our school. But we have everybody carpools for the most part, and they bundle. The kids in my neighborhood, we're all riding together, and Susie's mom is picking them up. So we have a system in place to facilitate that community of people that live close by that pick up and for the school so kids can carpool. So we don't see it as an issue. I'm not saying that we haven't spent that $10,000 every year at Gate City, but because we have. There have been families. I know the first year we had a family that lost their transportation for about 2 months, but we provided it. So, that's not going to be a hindrance. We're going to be, we want to love these kids, and we want them to have the best opportunity for success in their life as possible. And we're going to do everything possible to make that happen.
How many square foot is the proposed facility going to be?
Other than the gym being larger, the same size as Gate City Charter.
Roughly 48,000 square feet.
48,000 square feet, roughly.
It's a big rent for 48,000 square feet. Right? I mean,
48.
$1.3 million for 48,000
I'm
square
thinking
feet?
48,000 for 700, I'm gonna say 800 kids, it's small. Isn't that small?
Seems small. Also, 1.3 a year? That's a lot of money for 48,000 square feet. I guess one question I have is why, I mean, I guess it's everything, it's $186,000 in marketing.
Yeah, what are
So
we
there's
getting
no
for that?
management fee, right? Basically, there is no monthly, there's no 10% of management costs that go to NHA, right?
So
It's just like
everything
anything.
that we can farm out and contract out with NHA, we do. On-site, our teachers are in the building. Our principal is in the building. All of our operators are in the building. But the administrator and the team that fills out the 400 reports that have to be delivered every year, and the all of that takes place in Grand Rapids.
For marketing, you have $186,000 in marketing.
Yes, sir.
Is that $186,000 getting paid to NHA to do marketing? Or is that who's gonna get
Who's
that?
spending
The
that?
NHA
Who's-
contract is the one where everything goes to NHA, they pay all the bills.
Yeah. I'm not gonna
Right.
buy a Facebook ad, but NHA is on our behalf, in our area, targeted to our potential clients or students and families. So yes, NHA is gonna get that money, and it's $180,000 in the beginning that gradually goes down. But initially, we wanna open up with a bang. We did with Gate City, we had billboards, we did social media advertisement, we did,
I guess I just want to understand, because I
Greg Mayo,
mean,
probably.
you know, I didn't get to ask questions the last time. Help me understand, like, is NHA billing the school board for the marketing? Or is it,
no, we're
Okay.
gonna pay NHA for the marketing. They have the kit. It's like, they're our advertising agency. They'll do advertising placement, they'll do the marketing, the surveys. We have in-community events prior to opening at community centers, at churches, at daycares, where we tell people about our school.
right, I get all that. What I'm,
That
but see-
contract is 100% of the money goes to NHA. There's a certain amount.
That's what I'm saying.
The board gets to keep.
Right.
But then NHA does everything.
right, but, so 100, when we say they do custodial, or do we sub that out? Are you paying NHA custodial services? Or is
NHA
it just that anything that they keep at the end? You know, that's what I'm wondering. How
I
like,
think what Cheryl's saying is that budget
Is NHA's budget.
is all the, it's NHA's basically.
Yeah, all the money
NHA
goes to
gets all the
NHA, and then
money,
they do
and then they're
everything.
paying that stuff out.
And NHA gives the board a certain amount of their.
They have a certain amount that the
Flexible.
board gets,
How much is
but
the
all the
board
rest
gonna
of it
get?
goes to the NHA.
35,000.
So all that school, all the board will have is the 35,000.
That's correct.
To do whatever they want.
Whatever
Yeah.
travel expense,
Or whatever their
training,
priorities
whatever.
are. yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, they may.
Now, I think the school board has some input in this budget process.
To the budget, but
Yeah.
so the team in Grand Rapids is dealing with DPI. They're in the bank accounts. They do.
Right.
yes,
There is no bills that.
no.
If I can give you an example for the marketing, so
Yeah.
that also pays the salary of an admissions representative that's full-time for Gate City or for City
City
Charter, who does grassroots marketing in the community, is at community events, holds events at the school in the evenings and on the weekends, goes to preschools. So that's a full-time person who's out in the community marketing our school. So that's
But-
another piece of that.
But that's in the budget as well. So that's already in there
Separately.
as a separate line.
There's a ton of events leading up to the open of a school. And like you said, billboards, different social media campaigns.
in community events.
I mean, it's basically just whatever. Just give them all the money.
Yeah.
And they just.
That's how that
But
contract
they've got to
works.
fill out this budget to estimate how much they're going to spend on.
Based on my short-term experience with NHA, and then looking at their history of the company and their success through all of their schools, and specifically in North Carolina, I couldn't think of a better partner to come in to an area that's basically blighted and be willing. I mean, it's easy to put a school up in northwest Guilford County. That'd be easy, a instant success. It's very difficult to say, hey, Jeff, I want to put another school like Gate City that'll be quite a challenge for us to be successful for in East Greensboro. They didn't do that. Jeff Phillips and I went to them after our first year, and we thought, man, this is successful and this is great for this community. And after talking to parents and grandparents and seeing the kids in school, we said, we need to duplicate this because we know what else is out there. And we went and begged NHA to take a look. We were
Yeah, I
constantly
mean,
on them, nagging them.
I get what you're saying. I mean, I'm also, I think as arguably stewards of the state's tax dollars,
Sure.
you know, there is a degree of black box that this budget goes into and then disappears in a sense. That's from the way a regular standalone charter is operated. I mean, it's
Sure.
by design, right?
You may say it's a black box, but I say we get great value.
Sure. I mean, that's an argument that can be made. And I, you know, I'm not saying that, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with that. I just think that, you know, there is an element of you know, we don't really know to the, you know, because it's not the type of budget, it's not run in the same way that most of our schools, even our contracted, even schools that have a contracting email, and, you know, one we talked about earlier today, it was a little bit more, you know, and that's one of the reasons they get the charter, because they have no front end skin, they didn't have a front end skin in the game, and I think it just raises, you know, I'm just looking at this like, I mean, businesses don't make decisions that are against their bottom line either, right? That's kind of the first question I was asking. They're not going to hastily run into a place that they don't think that they're going to be able to net the students and be in the black at the end of the day. Because if they're not in the black, they're not going to be able to pay their own salaries.
That's correct. We had to sell them, and we worked really, really hard lobbying them to show an interest again in an area that needs another option. And so I don't think the priority for NHA, and I love them. I mean, we've known each other for 7 years now, and they are great, great people. Their first priority is not the bottom line in profit. Their first priority is a passion for kids, all kids. And if you look at if they only had a passion for profit, they do the easy thing and always put a school exactly where Greensboro Academy is, because that was
I would
easy.
agree with that.
Yeah.
I'm ready to make a motion.
All right, Linda Lynn. Yeah.
I make a motion that we move City Charter Academy forward to ready to open.
Thank you.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Just laughing. I'm like, what a sandwich in between. It was like, okay. All right. Any further discussion on the motion?
A question I had that I know that, I'm sorry, sir, what's your name?
Oh, Jeff Hyde.
Hyde, Mr. Hyde. He was speaking to the demographics. And I can't remember, there's no weighted lottery. I mean, if the school is put where he's proposing,
That is the demographic.
that will take care of itself. But, you know, by the same token, I look at the difference between Gate City and Greensboro, and those schools are night and day. So, hopefully, as you set about to start this school, you will stay true to what you're saying here and seek to serve the children that are being served in Gate City.
We have no desire to be anywhere else. Our board is committed to being in East Greensboro, into that area. None of us have kids that would benefit, or grandkids, that would benefit from a charter school in this area. We're doing it because there's a big, giant need.
That's great.
I think that, you know, I appreciate you all sending the spreadsheet with all the kind of roll-up data from other NHA schools. I think that, you know, they've put some good things in place and have gotten some good success and hired some strong leaders that have led to better outcomes at their school, their other schools that are serving low-income students, which I think is really admirable in their effort to try to serve all kids, even if transportation is not part of the equation. When, you know, we debate that a lot. I think that you know, I'm gonna support it, and I would like to. I mean, you all have a lot of NHA has a lot of schools in North Carolina now, and I think part of our job is to, you know, to be an accountability point and make sure that, you know, we are being good stewards of the tax dollar, frankly. And so I'd like to invite and request some folks from Michigan to fly down here and do a presentation to us about all the schools in North Carolina and allow us to ask some questions about kind of their thinking and their model. And, you know, just do some due diligence and have a conversation, because this is probably the biggest EMO in North Carolina. It's gotta be.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about, if you have how many schools? 13? So
I think this will be 14.
so if we were to go just take 10 schools and talk, that's $14 million a year in building revenues alone going to the corporate office. Which, you know, districts waste all kinds of money. I mean, like, let's be absolutely clear. And one of the reasons why NHA can even exist is because they're able to do things far more efficiently than we see in school districts do. But I think part of our job is to just, you know, make sure that we're asking all the right questions. So, you know, given the scale at which NHA has been able to expand since the cap's been lifted, and serving kids well, I think we could learn something, and, you know, it would be beneficial. So I'd love to have some folks come down to one of our meetings at some time, and we can have that conversation.
And I think that is interesting when you think about it and put it that way, that, you know, NHA's doing this, they're generally having, in a lot of their schools, they're outperforming the LEA with less funds and making a profit.
Right.
And then you say, you know, if it's always that money's the only thing that's going to fix schools, you've got somebody with less money that's turning a profit and putting out a better product. You know, and then you look at it and say that maybe there's other things we need to be looking at besides just, you know, is it funding? Is it this? Maybe there's, you know, things that deal with regulation that's issues. Maybe it's something that deals with accountability that's an issue, or something like that.
I mean, I think that it would be, again, due diligence as well as instructive on our part. You know, I know I know that NHA, I'm pretty sure, had to build out their own back office financially to run the North Carolina finances, because the methodologies that we use are really confusing and compared to other states. And so, you know, I'm sure there's some things that we could learn and hear about. So
I, for one, would really want to go into depth on the construction cost. I'm sure you're saving money, NHA is, with their construction than what we see sometimes in other public schools.
The average land and building investment is between $10 and $12 million for a great structure.
Right,
That
and
serves 720 kids.
yeah, and you know, we're building high schools for $40 million. You know, so I mean,
elementary
I
school, 30 million.
just think it would be, beneficial to you all as an organization, and I think it should, you know, be part of our due diligence as well. So maybe the Office of Charter Schools could talk with the NHA folks to set that up at some point. But
And if that goes very well, I wouldn't be surprised if the state board might want to hear about the presentation. So let's.
well, and again, part of the question is going to come up, you know, may come up at the state board. You know, how many NHA schools? What, you know, like the bigger you get, the more people are going to pay attention. So, you know, I'm kind of trying to get out in front of that.
Good idea.
All right,
All right, do we have a second?
ready? We got a second. Properly moved to second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Congrats.
I think that's the last time a national heritage was approved, though. It's been several years. And it,
Yeah, they had a little lull there for a
It was
couple of
because of
years.
construction
Gate
problems.
City.
I also think it was that
I believe what the guy said about, or what she said, like, or what he said about kind of responding to the environment around it. I don't think that they have like we're trying to get to this many schools, because it does always, it does seem like someone's, it seems like there's a board chair or somebody that's really eager on it.
national.
And then the sign.
I was on the CNN pages. And I came on the board and I was talking. I seen it.
Oh, yeah.
96. Okay,
Yeah.
JC.
now,
Yeah, JC. I said,
It's one of those days.
I'm trying not to look out.
Look, don't look, it's just so dreary.
It started out there. It
Oh,
was
I
like
know.
never did.
the least bit.
But since then, they have.
Oh, does it?
And I think that's why they had laws, because they had to figure out.
Yeah.
Because they weren't gonna get any more schools if they didn't.
I need to use the restroom. Do you want to take a 10-minute break or do we? All right, we'll start right at 3. We'll start on time, guys.
Start 3:15.
And now we're having low
Break till
performing
3
schools.
o'clock.
3.
We're having low performing schools now.
Oliver Brown.
Yeah, Paula
These are low
Brown.
performing.
That one's
Oh, yeah,
LP.
yeah.
An hour, Mr. Chair. This feels like, I think it's,
This is the late lunch? What is it?
but I would think that would make the afternoon go quicker, but that felt like it lasted for 3 hours.
Wow. Yeah, you get me cranked up. Man.
That's where the innovation comes in. It's rarely black and white.
And sometimes your decisions will be questioned. I know. They have to see the difference in the They're smart. Recognize the difference out there.
Really?
Is Michigan coming?
There's Alex's.
She's trying to learn a lot about what's out there. I have a lot of issues with that. Yeah, yeah.
They're not in shape. So what is this? This is recognition.
For students.
Keep coming back.
Just like a help check. It's not a game. Well, she just sent something.
When you talk about bureaucracy, that's where my games are more about. Cause it's crazy. Oh, glory, hallelujah. It's amazing.
It's just dark windows. Is it really that dreary out?
Where are we on the agenda here? We just have two. This is cyber, right?
Yes.
Not cyber.
Are you feeling it too, Joe?
Sorry?
Are you feeling it too?
It's the Monday thing or the lunch?
I need a nap. Well, look at.
All right, we're ready for Paul R. Brown. Let's get going.
This is like this.
And really, that's why I want to be here.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Leroy Purdy. I'm the chairman for Paul R. Brown Leadership Academy. And first of all, I'd like to thank you all for allowing us to come and speak to you just for a little while this afternoon. And hopefully we'll have some good news for you. We'll share some of the things that have happened, I guess, within the last 180 days. We saw you since the last time we saw you. We told you we'd do some things, and I think for the most part, we did what we said. We didn't do quite as well as we would have liked to. However, we did make some strides. The last time that we were here, some of the big things that I received from your meeting, it was that you all wanted us to do better academically. We did some better academically, but we are still not where we want to be. You also told us don't miss any DPI requirements. I think we did pretty well for that, so I don't think we met any DPI requirements. And they were also nice enough to make sure I have access to Epicenter so I can check for DPI requirements. And lastly, I'm thinking that it might have been Ms. Turner. Ms. Turner talked to us about the culture that we have when our Sea Cadets are performing. They have the bearing, that military bearing, and they can stay still and they can do whatever we tell them to do whenever they're on the parade field. And I think she asked us to bring that culture from the parade field into the classroom. And that's what we have been working on. Lieutenant Colonel Lloyd has done a tremendous job, and I've had opportunity to sit in on some of the classes, and the atmosphere is conducive to learning. We've made some changes as far as for personnel, and we will continue to make some changes, and I think we're on the right path to become more successful. Thank you again for your time.
I'm Lieutenant Colonel Lloyd, Commandant of Cadets. I remember the last time I was here, and that was the thing you told me. You've established your culture. Now it's got to translate into the classroom. So there has been a big change at the academy as far as personnel and the culture, not only of the cadets, but of the adults. So I'll be happy to answer any questions after Mrs. White finishes her briefing. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Keisha White, and I'm the new head of school at Paul R. Brown Leadership Academy in Elizabethtown, North Carolina. I graduated from North Carolina State University through the NELA program, one of the top principal preparation programs in the country. Last year, we met academic growth. There were several factors that contributed to this. Previous administration, along with Colonel Lloyd, knew something had to be done to address why we were not meeting growth. Last year, the school began to see an upward trend as a result of hiring educational consultants, Drs. Lisa Swenson and Tom Miller. Dr. Miller was an asset in assisting the school's operational components, while Dr. Swenson was instrumental with the academic piece. This spring, classroom walkthroughs and a school-wide remediation began to emerge, something that was not happening at the school. Prior to applying for the position, I had several opportunities to talk with staff and cadets and visit some of the classrooms and partake in many of their school-wide events. I applied for the head of school position in April this year. In preparation for my interview in May, I shared my 90-day entry plan. The plan included 4 goals. Goal 1, examine where we were as a school and create a blueprint to increase student achievement for all learners. Goal 2, establish and build positive relationships with stakeholders. Goal 3, develop a transparent school-wide communication system. And Goal 4, provide quality professional development that meets the needs of all learners. And looking at our school's 2018-2019 subgroup performance, our African American subgroup population, which is our largest ethnic group, performed lower than our Hispanic, white, and biracial students. Our 4-year graduation rate fell behind the state, but our 5-year graduation rate was only 4% lower than the state. And last school year, 69% of our students were identified as economically disadvantaged. To reach our academic goals, the following action steps were created. We are continuing to use MAP data to target areas of improvement and enrichment. Classroom walkthroughs with immediate feedback following is a non-negotiable. To ensure all staff are on the same page, I send out weekly newsletters to staff on Sundays. In the weekly newsletter are announcements for the upcoming week, special acknowledgments, upcoming events, web links from the Office of Charter School, and academic tools for teachers to add to their toolkit. This is also the first year the school is required to incorporate digital components into their lessons. I've designed a daily, stable bell schedule, which will allow for common planning by departments and time designated for PLCs, something that has not been implemented before now. This is a requirement, it is a requirement for administration and teaching staff to use MAP testing data, which will allow us to make the best decisions for corrective instruction, remediation, and enrichment. This past October, we participated in an NWE MAP data professional development work session in which we examined cadet results and discussed the next steps to ensure success of our cadets. It is my expectation for staff to participate in data talks in our PLC meetings by utilizing our MAP data. On the screen is just an example of our 6th grade fall benchmark data. Teaching staff are required to understand the reports, examine the breakdown of the report, decide how remediation, corrective instruction, and enrichment will support will be done on mastery or not mastery, and hold these discussions with the cadets and their families. It was not until this year teaching staff were involved in reviewing the data. On the left side of the screen is where we are growing. Growth is good, but I'm not satisfied. We can't afford to let down now. One of our challenges is lack of human capital. Over the years, the school has hired many retirees, which restricted him or her to work a full week. This year, I replaced 3 retired ELA teachers with 1 full-time ELA teacher and 2 retired EC teachers with 1 full-time EC teacher. To address the need for more teachers, I have partnered with surrounding universities to participate in their upcoming job fairs. I am also reaching out to Teach for America to partner with their organization. I've been impressed with the number of Teach for America colleagues I've had the opportunity to serve with in the past and now. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak before you all. Do you have any questions or suggestions for me?
Yeah. How many students are in your 6th grade cohort? There were just 12 in that valid testing. Is that the whole grade?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And it actually increased from in August. In August, we only had, I want to say 6. Now it's increased to 12.
So
Correct.
where are the majority of your kids? You have 150 total. Where are the majority?
The majority of our students are our 8th and 9th grade cohorts.
What percentage of those would you say are proficient or on grade? You know, they may not be.
I would say the 8th grade cohort, I would say 30% are proficient.
Well, you can look at just this 12 student, 8 of those 12 are likely to fail the EOG,
For the
correct?
8. Actually, 9 of them are likely to fail.
Right now, they have made some increase in looking at and their RIT score from the first testing that they've done in August to the second one that they've done back in December. And with that, we had our PLC meeting this past Wednesday. And what I told staff, what we need to do as a team is to actually look at that data and have conversations not only with the cadets but also with their families, so to begin to provide tools to help them at home as well.
Do you have any Saturday classes?
Yes.
That's what I thought. I thought you did.
I would like for Colonel Lloyd to talk about that.
What are you guys doing for remediation? I'm looking at a RIT score for 6th grade reading of 202, 211 being expected for grade level. I mean, that and with 12 kids, like you got a serious remediation issue here. What are you doing for remediation?
Yes, ma'am. We have Saturday study hall and Saturday school. 10 Saturdays a year is actual Saturday school where it's classroom instruction. But those cadets, since Mrs. White has gotten here, she's aligned the curriculum with the EOG, EOC standards. And before it was not being done that way. And so if you're failing the classroom portion, there's a good chance you're going to fail that portion on the EOG. So if you're failing, then you have to come to Saturday school, Saturday Academy for 3 hours. And that's from 9 to 12 every Saturday, unless it's a normal Saturday school. And then we also have we have tutoring Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, and Fridays, depending on what the activity schedule is. If we have a parade that Friday, then there is no remediation. But we do a remediation from 3 to 6 where we provide them dinner and transportation home.
How are you, what's that instruction look like? How are you approaching remediation?
We're going back and looking at what each cadet failed individually and saying, okay, this is what you did wrong. And I'm not an educator, but I'm learning a lot from Mrs. White. But what we do is, if you got this part of the test wrong, the teacher goes back in and says, show me what you did. Okay, this is why it's not working. And then the other thing that we're doing is we're pulling them from PE and military activity with our kids that have passed the EOG and the EOC in that area. And they provide peer tutoring, because we're finding out that that was one of the things that we saw tremendous help with last year. When we went back and explained to the kids the seriousness of it, they got together and they came up with their tutoring program. And so those kids that have passed those EOGs, sometimes it works better coming from a kid than from an old guy like me. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, with only 12 kids, and you should be able to really target
And
remediation, and this is fixable with 12 kids,
yes, ma'am.
but only if you're really strategic about how you remediate.
And that is what we're doing. We're and I'm just gonna go on and say it. The MAP data was not used to its fullest extent in years past. When Mrs. Heath came in and gave her class, we realized that there was a lot of different things we could be doing to make the MAP data work for us. And then we even, with the benchmark, when the last benchmark came out, they had 2 days where they went back through. If one person got it wrong, okay, then, hey, you didn't do that right. But if the whole class gets something wrong, we have to look at the teacher and say, hey, did you teach this right? Or maybe you're teaching it the way that they don't want it taught, but we got to get this fixed. And so the goal is to keep targeting them individually.
We almost closed your school last year.
Well, I know, sir. I remember.
Talk to me about the kind of process that you went through, or the kind of what happened that led you to a place where you're better at today. I heard a little bit about the kind of support you got.
Well,
you have anything to share about that?
Basically, what happened, sir, was whenever you guys basically let us know what we were on the chopping block, it was time to go home and meet with everybody and say, this is do or die. It's time to get serious. And the school had to take a hard look at itself, and we did an autopsy within the first 3 days of leaving here. And we said, what went wrong? The first year, we didn't make growth, but years 2 and 3, we did. And we went back and said, what changed? Why have we not made growth these last 2 years? And anything that we did, that we changed, that we could say that's probably the reason, we changed it back. One of the things is we used to have in-school suspension. We don't do in-school suspension anymore, because I'm taking you out of class for something. Not only are you missing that class, but now you're missing 5, 6 other classes that day, depending on if they're a middle schooler or a high schooler. So what we said was, you know what? Your detention will be in the afternoon. So now, hey, you didn't do something right in class. You're staying here today. You're going back to that class. Oh, and by the way, I'll see you this afternoon. That afternoon is from 4 to 6. Well, I won't say we cheated a little bit, but it's supposed to be marching with a rifle back and forth for 50 minutes. Instead, we changed it to, no, you're going to go to remediation, and the remediation will count as your tours. Meeting with our parents and explaining to them the seriousness of it, and getting them to buy in and rally around studying for the test. The other thing we did when we did the shutdown to start remediation, in years past we stopped 2 weeks in because someone said the teachers were getting burned out, or someone said it's not going to work. I went back and looked at the data and said, well, you know what, it worked these 2 years, so we're going to keep doing it. And even after the EOG, EOC result, before they even came back, we got the kids together and said, hey, who doesn't feel good about it? And those kids that said, I don't think I did that well. We started remediation before we even got our results back with those kids. And there were a few kids that said, I know I passed it, and then they still had to come back to remediation. But then we turned around during the summer, and I think you guys gave us till 3 July to have all testing done. We kept them until 2 July and had concentrated study sessions to try to get them over the proficiency mark. And that's what, if you look at the proficiency rating, we had our first proficiency this year, and that was in 8th grade science. And we needed 1 to get over the hump. Well, we got 3 of them over the hump to make proficiency. So it was taking to heart what you guys said, even though it stung a little bit, taking it to heart and saying, we've got to do this, and this is how we're going to do it. And then getting on the phone and asking people, what do you do? How do you handle this? Dr. Miller was a great asset, and Dr. Swenson. And the way they said, these are the ways you need to do things, these are non-negotiables. And so when I think we visited you in March the last time, and once we realized that the alternative model was not an option for us because of the fact that we could never fill those 75% barriers, we went back and said, this is what we have to do to keep the school open, and let's do it. And some people grumbled, some parents didn't like it, but in the end, we met growth. And my thing is, if we did that in 3 months, imagine what will happen if we do it all year long.
Well, I hope it means you're not an F next year.
They're a D. Is that right?
And I think we're in F.
They're an F.
Oh, okay.
But we met,
But they met growth. And to your credit, we're talking major. You went from a minus 2.7 to a plus 0.21. That's
D
so
in
it's
reading.
3.
D in reading.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now,
is it Dr. Heath, or is it Miss Heath?
Mrs. White, ma'am.
Ms. White, are you there every day now?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Excuse me. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So
Yes,
you're
I am.
there every day looking at the data,
I am full-time. I'm there every day.
and you started when?
My first day was June 10th.
Okay.
And can I ask how many members of the board of directors y'all have now?
We're at 7.
You're at 7?
And I will add, if I may, we're gonna probably have 1 additional member this month. And the great part about it, he was ahead of school, so we'll have additional, guidance, so maybe he can share some of this. I'm sorry. So we should have an additional board member this month. He'll come on, and he was ahead of school for a school in Wisconsin, so we'll get some additional guidance for him. He has done board training with us before, so I think we'll grow some as a board as well.
I think y'all have to keep pushing. You know, you had good growth this year, but you got to keep pushing and keep pushing. I mean, I remember, and I think y'all's mindset is different than it was, because I remember the first time you came, last time it was like, well, our goal is to grow 1 more child in math, and we were like, I thought my head, like, I thought I had brain matter up on the wall.
You went crazy.
you went crazy.
Because I was like, you're talking about just 1 kid, but now, I mean, like, just to see the mindset is totally different, and I think it showed up in the growth score, because you're like, we can grow these kids. These kids can learn. They can, do that, and I really think that y'all could end up, if you keep on, it's kind of like having a 3-point lead at halftime. You can't just say, well, that was really good, and then, stop playing the game. But I think if y'all keep moving the way that you are, I think you're going to have something really special. That's going to make a huge impact in these kids' lives.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Ms. White, I'm not sure you might be the person. There was almost a 25% drop in student enrollment this year. Do you know what you might attribute that to?
Well, I think because we are a military charter school, I can say that maybe it was the fact that some did not want to conform to the structure. But in my conversation with many of the cadets, I was actually on the day of my interview, I didn't know I was interviewed by some of the cadets. They were asking me questions, and then I was asking them questions. And I said, what do you like best about this school? And one of the cadets said the structure. And a lot of the cadets, they like the structure. Some people do not like structure. So I do want to say that could be a factor.
Was it one grade
And-
or area more than the other, do you think, or was it just kind of?
Yes, across the board. Colonel, would you like? You talking about this year?
Yes, because we lost. You guys got on me the last time because you have to speak into the mic so it goes on the record. The hurricane from 2 years ago, we lost kids. Their parents relocated for better opportunity, or they were staying with other people. And then last year, the hurricane happened again, and we lost kids. And so we actually had kids come back and then leave again.
Yeah.
And then another thing that really, we get a lot of applications from this area. And when we have to explain we're not a boarding school,
Gotcha.
and then we have people that have actually moved to the area so their kid can go to school there. But that is part of it. And then I will just be honest with you, with Mrs. White coming on board, a lot of people said, well, I want to see what she's going to do. And we're like, okay, that's fine, but you're going to miss out on a great thing. So
Well, if you have to go down slim and she gets you back on,
it is a different world. I would say it's a different world there this year. And so I think she's really, I'm not saying it because she's going to give me a raise. She's not. But she has done a
She
remarkable
shook her
job.
head no.
She's done a remarkable job. And part of what I had to learn was, my thing was, I felt like in the years past that I would mess up the academics because of the military. So I took a step back and tried to let the academic side run itself. And one of the things that Dr. Miller instilled in me over those last 3 months was, you got to get in there and get your hands dirty with the academics, because the military side is what's working in the school. So now make it work everywhere else. And so Mrs. White doesn't let me slack off on the academic side. I know more 8th grade science and biology now than I did when I was in high school. So
I just want to say I agree with Stephen. I think you guys are going to have a great story. I really do. And we want all those students to be able to take that military test and pass it.
Yes,
They
ma'am.
want to do that. And
Yes,
that's not as easy as people think.
No, it's not.
You gotta pass that. What I would like to see at some point, and you just, I'm not expecting, well, you may have to come back next year because it's 2 out of 3 years. If you do, I really want to see the growth and the performance of students that start with you in 6th grade and are staying with you.
Okay.
I really would like to see that disaggregated.
Okay.
Because being 6th through 12th, you're gonna have kids coming in, and they'll be 2 and 3 years behind.
And
that
we
catch up is hard.
And we have kids that stay with us 6th through 8th grade, but then 9th grade, well, I want to be, as they put it, normal and wear
okay.
jeans and go to a regular school. So we lose those kids, and then we wind up getting some of them back.
and can you speak to the graduation? It's down to 75%, your graduation rate.
Ma'am.
Are you just not tracking them after they leave?
No, what happens is because we do give every kid every opportunity to come in and be successful. Kids do come in, but we'll get an 11. This year I had an 11th grader that had 5 credits from his previous school.
Wasn't an 11th grader.
No, he wasn't.
No.
And of course, when they're coming in, we place them, and then the records come, and we're like, "Hey, come here, I need
Yep.
to talk to you,"
Gotcha.
and we make the readjustment, and they don't stay, and they want us to just give it to them and let them just walk through. And then we have kids that come in as 9th and 10th graders who are already 16, 17 years old.
Right.
And when we try to explain to them, hey, you need to do this, this, and this, they don't want to be bothered because they've already burned bridges at their traditional LEA. Now they come here and they burn the bridges. Now, one of the things that we hope is going to have an impact on that score is Mrs. White has signed an official agreement with Bladen Community College so that when our kids leave, we were sending kids there to take part in their adult program, but we weren't getting any credit because we didn't have a formal written agreement with the college.
Does Bladen have the actual adult diploma program?
Yes, ma'am, they do,
Okay.
but we weren't getting credit because we didn't have the formal agreement in place. We were doing dual enrollment with them, but
But
we were
not
not
the
getting.
high school piece.
No, ma'am, and so that's going to
That's
change the
important.
score. Yes,
And
ma'am.
the other thing is getting them in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade and keeping them so that you're not relying on that 11th grader coming in.
Yes, ma'am.
Because you're the last resort.
Yes, ma'am. And the bulk of our middle schoolers wind up staying.
And if you focus on those sixth graders and keep them, then when you get to ninth grade, you're not gonna have big problems.
No, ma'am.
Because
They're-
you'll have grade level kids.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
middle school is where you need to fix them. It's really hard to
Mhm.
take a ninth grader who reads on a third grade level and try to get them through high school.
That's
Yes, ma'am.
correct.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, yeah.
Thank you. This is good.
This is a good one.
It's exciting to see progress and hear the success that's been made. Hopefully, we won't need to see you for a little while.
Yes.
Work your plan. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I see Miss Blunt in the background there.
Small enough groups to get it done.
Is that
Mr.
Mr.
Curry's
Curry?
back
Oh,
there.
Mr. Curry's here. All right, we're ready. What's that?
Mr. Curry came.
Yeah.
So good afternoon. So we have been charged to present some information regarding North Carolina Cyber Academy, previously known as North Carolina Connections Academy. We'd like to first recognize, we do have some folks that called into the meeting, as I guess suggested from last month. We do have our board chair, Bridget Pfeiffer, who has called in. We have Dr. Leroy Ray, who has called in, as well as Deborah Williams is on the line. In addition to that, we have our CFO, Mr. Charles Baldwin, and his assistant Fiona on the call too. So we would like to recognize those folks if there are any questions that we need to pivot to folks on that level. I'm not going to stand in front of you long because I have brought with me my experts from the school that's going to take a deep dive into the academics and curriculum and instruction at North Carolina Cyber Academy and those. And if you do recall, many of you recall that this is our first year running independently. We separated with our EMO. So we have learned a lot, and there's a lot of stuff that we look forward to learning more to do. With me this afternoon, I have Mrs. Tamina Blunt, who's our Director of Academics. She has almost 20 years in charter school experience. And then I have Dr. Rebecca Smith with almost 40 years of educational experience in North Carolina. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce my chief academic team.
Can I ask a couple operations questions before you sit down? And finance questions. Have y'all had some turnover in the administration?
We had our operating, Mrs. Robinson, who was here last week. She is in Rhode Island. She got engaged this spring, and so she's moved up to Rhode Island with her husband.
Okay, so you only had one administrator.
Yes, from our last meeting.
And have you had any issues with teacher turnover?
At the last meeting, we reported it was about 8.8% teacher turnover.
Okay, so that would be like what, 4 teachers, 3 teachers?
Well, from last month to now, it's one teacher.
Just one
We
teacher?
lost one teacher from
Okay.
the meeting.
And no trouble paying the teachers, no furloughs, anything like that? Everything's good financially?
You know, our financial guys on the
Yeah,
line.
I saw your financial statement that you sent in, but I think we probably want to get into the budget a little bit too. I know y'all want to talk about academics, but just wanted to ask those questions, and I know that there's probably some questions about the budget.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a clarifying question. How many administrators and how many teachers do you have?
Currently, there are 103 teachers, and we have 9 administrators.
And that's up from how many? How many did you have before this year, administrators?
That's the same from when we started school.
No, now I'm talking about previous to the school year.
Oh, that's up by 4.
Because you had a big increase in salaries in administration, but then you had a decrease in salaries for teachers. That's a little concerning.
Right, when we took over from the EMO, a lot of the things that the EMO was doing, we took it on the administrative level. So we had to hire HR director, obviously we had to hire folks who run Exceptional Children's Department, the director there, Student Support Services. So we did have to hire additional administrators to do the work that the EMO was doing.
Okay, so that's the question I was asking you. How many additional administrators
Oh,
did you hire?
I'm sorry, miss, okay, in addition to that, we added 12?
Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry.
So I'm
Oh, I
confused.
missed that
Do you
too.
have 9 administrators or
We have 12.
1
12
administrators?
12 administrators.
12 administrators.
Yes.
Can I ask a budget question now, or can we?
Go ahead.
So I'm looking at the budget document we were provided. I'm just comparing, your budget for this year, which is, now that you're on your own, compared to 2018, 2019. And I just want to make sure I'm looking at this right. So I'm looking down at expenditures, particularly when it comes to salaries. Like the salary the salary budget for this year is $1 million more for administration than the year before. I'm trying to understand that. Is that $1.9 million? And you've got 12 administrators?
Yes, we added additional administrators from last year.
How many? 4
12,
additional?
there's 12, there's
12
12
altogether, but
administrators.
how many new ones this year?
From last year, we
From-
added 6. From last year from the EMO. We had,
So 6 people, 100,000.
That's 160, an average of $160,000 per
That's a lot.
administrator.
Does that include the benefits?
No, that's
No,
not.
benefits
Or
on a
is that
separate
just
line.
salary?
That's just
Benefits are a
salary, 'cause
separate line.
benefits and
Total,
taxes
total
are.
benefits for, is
Are there other
2.6
people that are included in that
yes, there are
line?
other people included, like administrative assistants, office staff is included into that as well. So when I was saying administrators, it's folks like the principals and directors, but we do have a clerical staff of 7 that falls under administrative
Okay,
line.
so there's
Oh,
12,
okay.
12 administrators, 7 clerical, all in that line.
Yes, ma'am,
Okay, so 19 people.
yes.
Still a big increase from one year to the next. That's $1 million in salary. I don't know.
How much was your contract with Pearson? Like, what did you pay
I'll-
Pearson?
The exact amount, I would have to refer to my financial folks on that one, exact amount.
It was a lot.
Mr. Baldwin?
$5 million a
Mr.
year?
Charles Baldwin?
So, Charles Baldwin, are you on the line?
I am. Good afternoon to the board.
How much was the contract with Pearson?
It was predicated on a couple of different items. They charge a percentage of the special ed funds. They also charge a percentage of revenue.
How much was it last year?
We spent, my calculation is about $8 million, paying Pearson to do all of the different facets of the job.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
So is that the first item under expenditures, Educational Resource Center? Is that what that is in the budget?
No, I think it's,
Yeah, because they don't have,
I would think so.
and I guess maybe, I don't know, I keep trying to remember when all this happened, but they were partnered with an EMO. They split with the EMO. So Pearson was the EMO, that was last year's. Then now they have a conglomerate almost of vendors that they use for their virtual education services, the
Yeah.
servers and the curriculum and stuff like that.
That's laid out in the budget.
8 million was the people from last year.
Right, and then all the breakdown
Of
is
who's-
there.
Of who they have now, or the services they have now.
It was roughly almost a 50% savings.
So 2 million,
Actually,
2.3, yeah, 2.4.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
But we see an uptake in salary of that, at least.
1.5.
Yeah. So that kind of compensates.
What's your student enrollment look like? Has it grown? Has it decreased?
Right now, our enrollment is about 2,200.
It started at with 1,700?
We started the school started out with 1,500.
1,500. And now you're at 22?
A little over 2,200, yes, sir.
Do you have a waiting list now?
We have, I don't call it a waiting list, we have 107 kids that's going through the process for next semester. So
For next
semester.
Next
For next
semester.
semester, yes, ma'am. And we are certainly doing an aggressive marketing tactic. Obviously, that's starting now too for marketing for next semester as well.
All right. I know Ms. Blunt and they had a kind of brief presentation
Yes.
to walk us through, so we don't want to.
Yes, so I have Dr. Rebecca Smith and Mrs. Tamina Blunt.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
I will kind of use my laptop if I can, just to see my notes for it. But we're going to go over just some of the questions that you guys sent us to be able to talk to what's going on with us academically at NCCA. As you guys know, last year, or at the end of last year, I was one of the ones that stood up here in front of you with begging, pleading hearts to talk about the needs that we had in our school and why we needed those things. And one of the biggest reasons was the academic concern. It was that the platform that we were using did not allow us the autonomy to be able to make adjustments to meet our students' needs. We saw year after year the outcome when we could not allow our teachers to teach necessarily. The system was almost like giving a textbook and taking that textbook, and the students had to pretty much work through the textbook. It didn't allow us to make changes in the curriculum. It didn't allow us to make changes to coursework, testing, any of that. And so that was a huge concern for us, especially for myself coming in last year, trying to coach teachers, trying to get them to make data-driven decisions for students, and they couldn't really make a lot of adjustment. And so this year we've changed over with one of those major changes was under academics, under our platform, Edgenuity. And so going through the questions that you guys sent us to be able to look at what's happening with us academically, it's not one of those pretty pictures to start with, because obviously we know that there was a huge deficit, and that's something that we're hoping to address. We've put a lot of things into place to address that this year. So going into the first slide, the first question asks about summarizing our academic data. Now, we know that you all have the data, and you're able to kind of see that information, but we did want to point out some of those key pieces because it says to talk about what is the leading cause for our low performance. And so when we're looking at that information, you know, from an outsider coming in, and I'll say that because I've only spent a year here, and so I still kind of have a two-sided view from it. So from an outsider looking in, you say, well, what are your key areas for low performance? You're going to say all the areas or a lot of the areas. There's a lot of areas that I think we have some opportunity for success in and that we've kind of made some growth in. But there's a lot of areas that I think are really hitting us hard. And so although you guys may have had the data, I kind of pulled over to the side some of those key areas that I think are really hitting us and really making an impact on that low performance. So the first couple of ones are areas of achievement. And I'm sure as across the state, math is that fun one for everyone, but it was truly one for us. And so the 3rd through 8 math with a proficiency level of 33.1% and the math 1 for 9 through 12. Mind you, that's just the high school math, not our 7th and 8th graders that take math as well, but our math 1 was 18.5. And the biology, when you look at it, it doesn't look as low as some of the other ones, but when you look at biology across the state, it is a much larger number. And so, well, not much larger, it's in the 60s or so. And so that was a deficit for us that we felt like we really missed the mark there, and we want to be able to kind of hit that area a lot more. Also, in looking at that, we're looking at those areas of growth because, as we know, it's not about which students walk in our door, it's what we do with them. And so that's why we're looking at those areas where we really missed the mark in growth. That first one, that math growth, that's our Achilles heel. That 16.82, we know that math is difficult for students in a brick and mortar setting. And so that is just exponential when you go into a virtual setting when it takes a lot of one-on-one work to be able to really help a student in math. And so it runs into one of our barriers. It is not an excuse. It is still something that we can't not teach math because they're in a virtual setting. And so that's one of those areas that we've put a lot of our energy into. We have instructional coaches. We have a lot of things that we're working with to be able to put some resources into that area and to grow that area. And it's obviously an area of focus for us. The next one doesn't seem like as much of one, that AIG, but it is because it's AIG. And so those are our students that in general you would expect them to make 4s and 5s. And it's not that they're not necessarily coming out as proficient, but they're coming in with 3s and 4s. And so our AIG students are also taking that hit. The other two that we have are our white population, our EDS population, that are also areas that we have that are really struggling to make growth. And so when we streamline our focus and our attention, it doesn't mean that we're not going to put any energy into those other areas, but these are areas that we felt like that we really had to devote a particular amount of attention to, because these are areas of such strong deficit that if we don't grow these areas, it's not going to lead us to a lot of success. So we're putting a lot of our energies into this, whether it comes in the form of things like our instructional coaches, things like our instructional plan, even our face-to-face sessions that we're doing. We're putting a lot of energy into our mathematics and into growing our different populations, extending and refining even our AIG students. And so just making sure that we understand that, yes, we understand that when they come into a virtual setting, think about school has been a certain way for a very long time. A lot of our students come to us in middle school and high school because they're looking for something different. They're looking for a change. They've done school one way for a particular time, and now we're asking them to really change their approach to learning and how they do that. And that does take time. What we've seen is that it usually takes the students about 5 to 6 months to really adjust to the type of self-discipline that it takes, the type of interaction that it takes. They have to really be open and reach out to their teachers. And so there's a lot that it really takes in adjusting to how they are as a student. But at the same time, although we know it takes a little bit of time for them to get adjusted, we have to seek out ways to adjust them a lot quicker so that they can spend time learning and not spending time adjusting to that. So going into the next question, it has to do with those trends. So in looking at this data, what are the trends that we're seeing? And Dr. Smith is going to talk a little bit about some of those trends that we're seeing in the data.
Okay. He's a lot taller than me. Good afternoon. Happy to be here with you this afternoon. We really have taken a deep dive at the trends that have been happening, not only just last year, but in previous years. And of course, this is my first year working with the school in this capacity. But I want to share that I'm glad you all asked this question, because we've been looking at these things and we are really looking at accountability for what our trends have been, where we need to go and where we haven't been. So first of all, our data, of course, has revealed that our math and our reading or ELA instruction at all grade levels for all subgroups, we've not been making consistently the proficiency growth requirements, and we know that is something that has to be targeted not only in terms of the curriculum, but also in terms of the instruction. Our exceptional children and our AIG learners, also, that is an issue for growth and for proficiency. And as Ms. Blunt just shared, we are having serious look at that data, holding people responsible for understanding what's happening with their students' growth or lack of growth on a formative level on a regular basis, and having dialogues about that either through grade level meetings or principal meetings with the particular school and through PLCs, and then work with coaches, instructional coaches, et cetera. Also, in terms of our English language learners, they did have proficiency for 2018-19, but we want to continue to attain growth for them in years to come. For all grade levels, math continues to be that primary source of deficit, and as she has already shared. And of course, the data reveals to us that the school needs to be using benchmark assessments. We need to be using formative assessments on a regular basis, on a daily basis, with whether it's just a ticket out the door, as well as teacher instructional tools that will adjust based on the lesson that's being delivered and how the student is doing, whether he or she understood the lesson, whether or not they had any success with the standards that were taught. And then also the trends reveal a lack of academic growth overall for students on an annual basis, and that is something we definitely have a laser focus on to try to improve.
Have you looked at how Edgenuity lines up with the standard course of study? Have you looked at that alignment?
We have, and actually, we are working in collaboration with Edgenuity, preparing a very specific document for that. But yes, and I'll let them speak to that because they vetted out Edgenuity as the LMS prior to my being there.
Sure, and that's a great question. That is something that we do spend a lot of time focusing on. One of the great tools in Edgenuity is that it actually is, they have a North Carolina group that actually aligns it with North Carolina standards, but also that, again, we have that flexibility to be able to kind of make those adjustments if we see something that doesn't fit or if we need to be able to spend more time on a particular area. The other great thing about Edgenuity is that it gives us data back by standard. And so as the students are working through their program, as students are completing tasks, whether it's tasks assigned by teachers or tasks assigned in the program, it is all documented through standards-based information. And so we're able to actually have those conversations to compare it to our benchmark data, which we are using Mastery Connect, or Case 21 benchmarks that are on the Mastery Connect platform. So we're able to use those benchmarks and take where it's saying that our data meets there, where the DOKs are, where the, where are the standards that we are needing to spend our highest amount of time on, and we're able to match that up with how they're actually doing at Edgenuity. That's one of the areas that I'm actually happy to say has been matching up pretty well, because that doesn't always happen. A lot of times when we do benchmark assessment, whether it's NWA, CASE, whatever it is, a lot of times you don't get that matching your curriculum as well, but we are seeing similarities between how they're doing with these standards in their coursework as well as how they're doing with these standards, how they're able to actually apply those standards. And so that's the difference. When you're thinking about your coursework, you're spending a lot of time looking at it almost in isolation versus when they're taking their benchmarks. All of our benchmarks are comprehensive because I need to know we don't have a lot of time. We have too much ground to cover. And so I can't say, we're going to just focus on just the standards that you've covered so far. I need to know, we can grade it and look at how you've covered, what you've done on the standards that we've covered, and because it gives it to you by question, by standard, all of that. And so we can look at that and see how our teachers are performing and how our students are performing. But we also need to know, what are the standards, what are those prioritized standards that we need to spend some more time on? What are those prioritized standards coming up that we have a really big deficit in, or that our students maybe already have mastered? We don't need to spend as much time on that. It's something we can spend some other focus in on. And so we do, that is one of the great features, is that it already gives us a data standard base. And so we can align that. And it is North Carolina aligned, not just Common Core standards. It meets the needs of the changes with the math curriculum and all of that.
Does Edgenuity have a remediation, like if they're not matching the standards, and you can take them and put them someplace, have them do another course or some remediation
Sure.
to do that standard?
Yes, we have MyPath and PathBlazer. Those are the intervention programs to be able to kind of remediate students.
Okay.
So we have remediation that we do kind of like, I would say, in-house remediation, whereas with the teachers, if they have a student that has a deficit in an area and they need to spend more time, or they need to go back and scaffold in that information from prior levels, we have MyPath, PathBlazer. Those are those intervention programs to do that. And then if it becomes more of a dire need and they have to go into our MTSS program, and then we're using Branching Minds for that MTSS program. It just documents it a little bit better, and it's more intense intervention that's happening at that level. So those are both new things that we've implemented. Obviously, the MyPath and PathBlazer would be new things that we've added this year with Edgenuity, and then Branching Minds is also something new that we've added this year, because that was where we noticed that we had to actually know what was happening with our students. We can't wait until the end of the year and hope that things turn out so well. We have to continuously evaluate data and see what's happening there.
And I bet that's where this slide comes in. I'm thinking that this is going to tell me how many students are at proficiency level.
Well, I will get to that in just a minute. That's going to be our benchmark slide that I'll get to in just a second. This next slide talks about our academic goals. And so that is leading right into the question that you just asked, though. And so the academic goals, and this is, again, something you guys may have seen before, because that comes right from that internal review report where the state already sets goals for us. But the reason that we included this is because this is our focus, that we have to, this has a 10-year plan that lays out what we have to do kind of in increments to be able to meet those goals. And so everything we do, we're comparing it to this.
You don't have 10 years.
Well, no, I'm saying that the way that the state gives it to you is a 10-year plan.
comes out as 10
But it
years.
gives you each year, right, it gives you each year what you have to make. Oh, yeah, definitely. We
Yeah, but
definitely
you
know. But it gives you
This
each
is a
year
formula.
what the goals are per year. And so we're able to take what it is for this year. So you see the 2018-19 goals for math for 3 through 8, it has it at 36.5. Well, obviously we want to do well above 36.5, but it gives us that bottom line that says everything we do, if it doesn't meet that, then we're redoing it. There's something that's wrong. And so everything we're doing, we are comparing it to, whether it's our benchmark data, whether it's our coursework, everything we're doing, we're comparing it to those goals. Like, are we working towards meeting these goals? And so, no, it has the 10-year layout, but we're only looking at the 1920 school year and making sure that we're meeting the goals for that.
But I mean, even this next year's school goals have got to be higher than what it says here.
And that's when we go to
Very
the
low.
next one, the benchmark. And so that's when we go to this next slide, which does kind of lean to that question that you asked. And that's us looking at where we even are with our benchmark data. We've got a comparison here that looks at where we were last year in each of these areas. And then we looked at our first round of benchmarks and where we were at those areas. The colors are pretty basic. It's going to be green, we were above where it was. Yellow was below. Yellow, it was right there, no more than 1 point above or beyond. And then the red is below. And obviously those reds are going to set off red flags for us. Those are going to be areas that we're really looking at to be able to see what happened. And again, you see that math for 6 through 8 was an area that we really have to put some focus into. But if we look at the math for 9 through 12, while it has not met the 45 goal that the state has for us, we are well on our way with that one to be able to improve it from where it was last year to start making those achievements. We do know that high schoolers taking Math 1, they're not usually your strongest math students, and that's okay. But we have to be able to figure out how to build in some of those prior skills that they're missing in math to be able to grow them. Our elementary has seen a lot of gains, and we're excited about that. And again, these are comprehensive as well, so they're able to show a lot of gains from where we were last year, even looking at meeting some of the state goals that they've set for us in those different areas. ELA has come out obviously stronger, even improved from last year, except for that one area, I think, of ELA, and then our English too.
What's the benchmark, Ms. Blunt?
The CASE benchmark, we use CASE 21.
Case 21?
Yes, CASE 21.
So it's saying the third graders
Online.
in reading,
Yes.
the third graders in reading were 43% proficient last year, and this projecting they'll be 75% proficient this year in fourth grade. How different is that? How you reading that?
Sure. And so when you get the CASE 21, they give you a benchmark proficiency, a projected proficiency based off of how they've done with this work and looking at the time frame. And so that's where they have them for some of the different benchmarks that we have here.
Okay.
And as you can see, there's a range of different levels, just depending on the different things that happen with the students and how well they'll adjust into it. I will say elementary, we have a lot of students that are returning. As you know, we get our upper grade students, we get a lot of babies that come in, and when we get enrollments, that's where we get a lot of our enrollments at, are in our upper grade students. And so that's the area that we're really having to put a lot more of that focus in. We do have instructional coaches that are for the upper grades in particular, for the different content areas, to be able to really focus in on that attention and to be able to find out what's happening with those students for one, but also what's happening with those teachers, because that's the other side of what we're pushing this year, is a lot of the accountability piece. Is if our students are not performing, what else do we need to do to be able to make sure they're getting there?
A quick question. I am not familiar with Case 21,
sure.
and maybe I should be. Are there any schools,
We've used it, we're not using it now, but we've used it before.
how good were the projections?
They were high.
Yeah.
I think.
They were high.
I know HSA using it, they were high.
Yeah, we stopped using it because the correlation wasn't there.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
What wasn't there?
The correlation.
Correlation.
Between what we were seeing on the case and what we were seeing on the EOG.
Yeah, and we actually did some comparisons before we did this, before we actually went into CASE. I did quite a bit of comparisons too, but we did comparisons and looked at the percent of accuracy, and it did have one of the highest percentages of accuracy. When we get into something like NWA or something of that nature, a lot of times for the lower grades, they give you a little bit better correlation, but as you get into the upper grades, they really do start to lean off in that way. And this is one of the ones that we've had that gives us, when we try to compare and look for different benchmark assessment types, that gives us one of the better comparisons than some of the ones we've searched out.
Are you going to be using the NC check-ins at all?
We didn't use the NC check-ins, but mainly because of, if you guys remember when we talked about last time, our testing process, that can be
Just
really
such a
interesting.
nightmare.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's
really
right,
hard to
that's
make
right.
that happen.
Are the high school courses year-long?
No, the high school is on a block schedule, and that is something that we're just looking at because of the virtual setting. It's just really hard for students to be able to kind of grasp that.
Well, and you admit
So-
students in the second semester, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, we will be enrolling
high
students in
school.
the second semester, yes.
I mean-
The reason I was thinking, I was looking at that Math 1, proficiency, which is,
So you
I
haven't.
get it. But do you do a foundations class
We
for
do.
credit? Okay.
We do have
What kind
foundations,
of
and we do have a lot
assessment do you give the students so you know whether that they're ready for the Math 1 versus foundations?
So I'm actually really glad you said that, and I hadn't considered even bringing that to this slide. But we do foundations for those courses, and we do foundations for Math 3 as well, just because that is now a tested subject as well. But our foundation students did not take they take foundations first semester, and then they'll take the regular Math 1 the second semester. And so we do expect to see that level of increase because we're spending a lot of attention with those foundation students. And that's actually a large number of our students that
I
came
would
in
think
with some
so.
deficits that we want to be able to really give them that opportunity to get that foundation to exactly what it is, a foundations course, to build that foundation so that they're able to move forward. And so you will have a lot more students that are testing in Math 1 second semester because they'll be coming out of their foundations course, and Math 3, coming out of their foundations
Right.
courses and taking their regular Math 1 or Math 3 next semester.
Well, hopefully that'll
I agree.
show benefits.
You know, it's hard enough to take the same set of kids from one year to the next and show significant growth. Here you're going from 1,700 students ADM month 1 to 2,200 students ADM month 2, an additional 500 students coming in from all over the place in a block system. How in the world are you going to get them caught up?
Well, how do you do that in a high school course?
It's a good question. Do they even attend enough ADM days for them to count in the testing?
Did you increase the high school from ADM from month 1 to 2?
Yes, significant. Seniors alone were like 60 additional
Well,
seniors.
how do you apply the 10-day rule?
They have a different calculation, some kind of different calculation in the
their,
pilot.
their funding's like
For a 10-day on a EOC course?
I'm
How
not sure.
many EOC courses though for the senior?
Uh-huh. The 10-day rule.
There's not that many in the senior year for EOC.
Not the senior
Yeah,
year,
but look at
Joe
9,
said-
10, 11, 12. There's like 50 to 100, crazy number of additional
For these
kids.
four
Yeah.
courses test.
Right, the 10-20-day window of being able to.
I mean, how do you manage it? I just don't get it.
For Math 1 or English 2 or biology, that's that 10-day window.
Joe, where do you see month 2?
How are you putting that to accountability?
Oh, I've
It's
got
in that.
Where are they being placed?
When they were counted in somebody else's probably transferred out of that.
Yeah,
senior.
I was gonna say, for the most part, if they've come into us, they were probably from another school, and so they're gonna be transferring it, right.
Your biology, so they were in there 10 days.
Yeah,
for
for the
getting
most part, if
instruction.
they come in that late, they're coming in transferring it from
Oh,
somewhere else. They're not
Same
just sitting
class.
home for that amount of time. Right. Yeah, and that, yeah, we do run into that as well. We have a lot of our students that are coming from homeschool. And so, we have a lot of students that come from homeschool. We have a lot of students that, we have students that come with quite a bit of different things. And I think it's one of those things where there's no way that it's an excuse, but it's important to understand kind of the makeup of our school. As you guys know, just working in the charter world, you have students that are coming to us as a choice. And it's because generally something didn't work for them somewhere else, or they were looking for a different option. So for us, that's almost kind of magnified, because we have students that are looking for us for a variety of reasons, whether it's students that are coming because they're involved in some type of other activity. We have a lot of students that come to us because of things that may not be something that's on record, or may not be, it's not necessarily something that qualify for an IEP. We do have a lot of students that are coming in 504, and that's under the realm of, we have a lot of students coming with anxiety, a lot of students that come in from bullying or something that happened at their prior school where they were looking for a different option, and it's a change that they were able to make. And just working in a charter system for a long time, I've seen students that come in because they're making that change. They're looking for a different option. But I've never seen it at this rate. I've never seen it where so many students are looking for a different option because of social anxiety, because of interactions with their peers, or interactions or something that happened at a school. And they have, or the ones that are coming from a homeschool setting that have just decided to try something different. And so the students that we get, there's a lot of adjustments that we have to help them make. A lot of times we're having to help them trust, trust again, to be able to trust in us, to be able to work with them. But a lot of times our students are not coming to us with great experiences in school. And so we have to figure out how to serve our students academically while also meeting those socio-emotional needs. And so that requires a lot of effort on all sides. I think we do a good job of being able to address those needs and make sure we're meeting the needs of our students. That's why when I say there's a lot of communication that happens from our teachers, from our counselors, from our caseworker, it's just a lot of communication that has to happen because our students are not ones that, and it's not all of them. I won't by any chance try to bulk all of our students in any way. But we do have a lot of students that come in with different deficits or different reasons, or and having to make those adjustments to be able to help them, one, get adjusted to coming out of a negative situation a lot of times, but two, also learning how to do school totally different and to be more of an independent learner and more of an independent thinker. Even though they're not out there to do school all by themselves, there's a lot of self-advocacy involved. A lot of reaching out to your teacher and saying, hey, can you help me out with question number 2? And that does take time for students to do, especially students that are used to sitting in a classroom and letting class happen to them. We can't, there's no classroom that we're walking around and being able to use proximity control. And then the other part, which I think I get to a little bit later here, when it comes to one of those biggest challenges, it might actually be the next slide, it is the next slide actually, is this slide here. This is, and it probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but let me explain some of the things that you're seeing. So when you're looking at that first part, when you say enrollments, you have high school, middle school, and elementary. When you're looking at enrollments, please know that that's enrollments in course. So any one student can be enrolled. If you're in high school, you're enrolled in 4 different courses. And so that's not 4,000 students, that's 4,000 enrollments in different courses.
Okay, but okay, go ahead.
Sure. And so when we're looking at our enrollments, we're looking at the information by enrollment. One of the biggest pieces that we run into in a virtual setting, and I dare to say you probably hear this from most virtual schools, is the difference between can they access the information, can they master the content, and what type of work that do we have? What do we have happening with our students? And so, because they are learning to do school in a different way, and what we call that is pacing. And so the first side of it, you see where it says average overall grade, that's mastery. And so with mastery, that's what grade students are making. And so mastery,
Where's that?
I'm sorry, it's, if you look at my green arrows, I know that's kind of a weird thing, but if you look at my green arrows, the ones on the, if I'm facing it, the ones on the left side of it, they have the average overall grade.
Right.
That's mastery. That's can they access the content? Can they actually understand the information there, apply it, do the work that's in the coursework? And so if you look at that across the board, you're getting somewhere in the average range, average to just above average when you get to elementary. So you have 77.6, 72, 87.3. However, something that is strongly affecting our students is that side on the other side of the arrow where it says the average actual grade. To get their actual grade, we also factor in pacing. Are the students on pace? If you're supposed to be on lesson 45, are you at lesson 45? And I'll quantify this in just a moment, but are you at lesson 45 or are you at lesson 25? And it does leave in that room for, yes, we are a flexible setting, and so you may pick up and do all of your reading today and do all of your reading for the week today and all of your math for the week on Tuesday. It takes that into account because for a student to fall behind in pacing and have a negative in pacing, you have to be more than 10% behind in their pacing. And so pacing is something that continues to plague us. And as you see, the effect that it has on student grading, it takes our high school students from a 77.6. When we factor in their pacing and how far they're behind in pacing, or how much they're off in their pacing, it takes it down to a 56.9. For middle school, it went from a 72 to a 59.3. And for elementary, even with the additional support, obviously you're going to have younger students. You may have their parents or their learning coaches that are a little more hands-on and being able to monitor that process a little bit more, a little bit less independence. You have 87.3 all the way down to 75.6. That has become one of those things. So imagine in a classroom if you have students with their heads down. If you're in a classroom, you're going to walk around, you're going to use proximity control. You can see when your students are off. If I'm teaching math and my students start to kind of glaze over, I can see, wait a minute, we're not getting it. Let's go back, let's pull back, and let's see what's happening here. Imagine doing that in a virtual setting and monitoring what's happening with your students when they start to fall back, and doing it with just the sheer number of students that we have. It's not that it's impossible, and we're not saying that it's impossible. It is something that we just have to overcome. But pacing has been that killer because it is students learning to do this, especially at this point in the year. We do expect this to make some dramatic changes. Some of the stuff that we have put in place, a lot of our teachers are doing some of the stuff that we put in place for policy, and that some of them are just taking on their own, putting students on plans, on behavior plans, because this is kind of our behavior. And I think I kind of mentioned this a little bit last year too. This is our behavior. We're not having fights in the classroom, or we're not having, saying mean words. We're having students that are coming to school and thinking, oh, it's an online school. I can just do it whenever, or I can do a little bit today and I'll walk away. When we changed over from Connections to Edgenuity, this took a major hit because our students were used to a platform, and you guys know I'm not the biggest fan of our previous platform, and it was this was one of the main reasons. It was that they were able to pretty much fast track through that program. They could just skip through and pre-test through and kind of go through, and they were not getting the information. They were not grasping that information. And so that would come through very visibly when you get to assessment terms, when they're not performing on it. They can't apply the information because they never really internalized it. And so that's one of those areas that I definitely see is something that we are kind of running into this year, and probably why we have, I heard you guys ask a group earlier, what would have to do with the difference in some students leaving or some students coming. I think that's been a major area for us because now they have to work. They have to do a school day's worth of work in a school day's worth of time, and that is taking some adjustment. And so I have students that I know are really good students that have said to me, I was really off pace in the beginning. Like, I couldn't understand why I could not catch up to pace. And, I did that first lesson, and I don't understand. I did that first activity. It told me I had to do this today, and I did it. And I'm like, well, did you look at your actual course calendar? Because if you looked at your course calendar, there were 5 activities for you to do today, not 1. And they were used to doing the one thing, check, moving on. Doing the next thing, check, moving on. Whereas now, they're having to sit through the actual instructional piece where they're watching the video or sitting through whatever's happening with the teacher. They're having to go through and do the vocabulary activities. They're having to do the work. And they're having to spend a true classwork's amount of time doing a true classwork's amount of work. And so some people are not completely happy with it, but I will tell you, our parents and the feedback that we received, they absolutely love the curriculum. They love the curriculum. They love the content. They feel like it is definitely a more full curriculum, a more well-rounded curriculum. However, it is taking them time to get used to the amount of time they have to put in a school. And so pacing has been something that we've spent a lot of energy on because it's not that they can't do it. We can see that from Mastery. They can do it, but they really had to learn all over again how to be a virtual student. And so we've put some criteria that are in place. We've put some behavior plans and things that we're working with in place, things that our teachers are doing, things that some of our support staff that we talked about when we took over from Connections, and we were able to kind of pull some of those things in-house. That's a part of what some of the staff doing. When you're looking at, if you're looking at a brick and mortar school, you look at behavior, and you're going to have behavior staff to help address some of the behaviors that are happening. This is where we needed support at, to not let students slip through the cracks, to not let things keep going by. And pacing is just one of those major areas. And so we're continuing to see bits of improvement in this over and over as we're putting those plans and things into place. I do think that as we go into second semester, this is going to be an area that we're going to be excited to look at because they're starting to catch on even now. It took a while. We had to get adjusted to school ourselves, just doing it all kind of on our own and making those adjustments. But our students, even second quarter, have made such an adjustment to where they were first quarter that I'm actually really excited to see what they're able to do second semester and be able to apply that to now that you're actually here and you're doing school and you're doing it at an appropriate pace, you're not behind. Now let's see how you can apply what you've learned to, whether it's assessments, whether it's whatever we have going on. Yeah.
Great.
This report was ran December the 1st, I'm assuming. It's got
Yes.
that date. Okay, so let me see if I understand this.
Mm-hmm.
In December the 1st, you had in your high school, 77.6% of the kids could do the work.
That was
They're
the
not
average
behind.
grade.
That's the average grade.
That's the average grade.
It's
Yes,
not percent
that was
of
in
kids,
mastery
it's the
grade.
average grade.
Average grade. Then the next one, 56.9,
That takes into account pacing.
that's
and
the
so that-
pacing part.
that-
So then I could say 44% are not where they're supposed to be in their pacing.
No, not exactly. So I'm glad you asked that. So no, it's actually a grade calculation. So it would be, if I took this as just one student, so this student had a 77.6. It's almost like turning your paper in late. You would have a 77.6 if you didn't turn this in 2 months late, and we had to take credit off for you not turning your work in on time. And so that pacing takes into account the fact that you are 20%, 30%, 40% behind pace. Basically, that's saying that when you get to the end of this course,
Right.
you're not going to finish this much of your course if you don't catch up to pace.
Okay, so what percentage of kids are not where they should be?
Percentage of kids that are not where they're supposed to be. If you look at, okay, so this takes a little bit smaller view, but that chart piece in the middle, that's a lot of what that tells you. So it tells you the students that, what percentage of students don't need, that's the percent of enrollments. It's not exactly percent of students, but it's percent of enrollments. So right under where you see the actual number of enrollments, that 4,200 number, if you look below that, all that, look, the little dots, the green, purple, blue, all of those little dots, they tell you for each of those categories. So they tell you the percentage of students, the percentage of enrollments that are off pacing, the percentage of enrollments that are off mastery. And so you see that the percentage that are off pacing is almost double the number that are off mastery. So I have 10%, if I'm looking at high school, I have 10% of my enrollments that are off because of, that are in alarm is what we call it.
Okay.
That they're in concern because of mastery. Whereas I have 19, almost 20% of them that are in alarm because of pacing. So that pacing is what's really affecting those numbers. to be
Okay,
able
and
to
is their learning coach aware of
Yes.
that?
Absolutely.
How do you inform the learning coach?
So we have biweekly data meetings, and I meet with as the director of academics, I meet with the learning coaches as well. But we have biweekly data meetings, and as far as letting the parents know where they are, we send progress reports out. And another great little feature is
But I-
automated.
And I'm saying learning coach being the parent.
Oh,
whoever.
sure.
Okay, that learning coach,
Got it.
not the learning coach you hire.
Sure. And we're able to send those progress reports out. And so the teachers send out weekly progress reports, and that progress report shows them all this data for that student. And so the learning coach is able to see where your student is. And actually, we send those progress reports just to kind of bring awareness, but they can see that at any given time on their dashboard. When they look at their dashboard at any given time, it shows them if they are behind in mastery, if they are behind in pacing. That's why we usually get those calls that, I'm behind, I don't know what else I need to do, and that's why I was able to kind of see what was happening with some of those students in the beginning. So at any given time, they can see all of those different areas, where you stand in all those different areas. We send the progress reports just because it makes a little bit more of an impact when the teacher's saying, hey, I'm having to send you a progress report because you are behind in this area.
I have two questions, Jamina. So the, down by your green arrow, the next block over, average attendance the last 7 days, is that saying that in high school, the average student attendance was 2.9 days? out
That's
of
the hours,
7?
actually. So that's the daily hours.
Oh, daily hours.
Daily hours, okay.
So only 2.9 daily.
So as you
So
see,
3
that's
hours,
where they're pacing.
they're spending about 3 hours a day.
When they should be sending 6. And so that's where that
Oh,
pacing
my.
piece is coming into play
Let's say
because,
middle school, how long?
right.
Secondly,
Online academy.
Maybe that's
Well,
what-
I was gonna say, and there is other factors in there
Yeah,
where they're
that
doing,
comes
research
3 to 4
papers or they're
hours a
doing
day.
readings and things of that nature, but it still should be considerably
schools
higher.
too.
We do that's why we also do our attendance piece where we're looking at what you're doing outside of class versus what you're doing inside of class, because there's live lessons that they do. For any given student, you're gonna have at least 2 to 3 live lessons a week. And that's going to be you working with the actual teacher in that time. So those hours are also taken into account, as well as any type of readings that you have to do, any type of papers. I know my ELA teachers in particular are spending a lot of work with making sure they match up the time that they're having to spend on the outside doing those papers versus what they have to do inside of the coursework. And so that they're.
So that's
and-
just active, when they're
That's
actively
This is
logged
active logging
in,
hours.
doing something.
Exactly.
Do you guys use Power School?
We do.
So how frequently do the teachers put the grades in Power School?
We do at least once a quarter because we have this, in Edgenuity, it keeps a grade book. So think about that as kind of like your green grader. And so they have that in their grade book, and
So I'm
parents
just thinking as
spend-
another resource for parents, if they can sign into Edgenuity, they can sign into Power School.
Yes.
They should be apprised of what's going on.
How do you
Right,
do
and that's the-
attendance on Power School? How do you put attendance in on Power School based on
We
what?
have to submit our attendance on a monthly.
So first, when we opened in 2015, we went to the state board, and since we're so unique, there's a different format that we capture attendance through a spreadsheet, and we submit that in, because Power School is really designed for that traditional setting, that 5-day week. Of course, our kids are 7 days, Christmas, New Year's, and that type of stuff.
They don't do daily attendance.
No.
So the,
Our artists classify as participation and not attendance.
how do they calculate that engagement attendance alert? So a third of the kids had an engagement alert. What does that mean? They didn't spend enough time live on the system?
Exactly. And so we're looking at, those are all alerts, exactly what you said. They're alerts that they're not spending, that they're behind in what they need to be able to stay on pace for the course. So if I'm looking at mastery, it means they're below the percentage level. I think ours is at 80%, or maybe 75%, I think. So they're below we set the benchmarks for each of those areas. And so for pacing, if they're more than 10% behind, that's where we've set it at. If they're more than 10% behind, then they will show up in pacing alert.
So it's not based on percentage of time engaged, it's more percentage of mastery, what they've finished?
Right, it's where they are in the course. Are they keeping up with where they should be at in the course? That's all.
All right.
It's a very different one.
One more. I will allow one more question because we're now at time.
Yes,
I know,
we
I
are.
understand.
You always take your time up for later.
Bruce.
Nah, that's okay. It's not. It was going to be a comment to that. Now I got a lot of questions, but
Well, guess
Don't
what?
come back
We'll
next
see
time.
them next month.
maybe I'll be more vocal for the beginning.
And I'm sure Ms. Blunt will be happy to
Yeah.
share her
I
email
am.
and phone number. So if you want to
I'm
call her
always here.
directly. But I think you've provided sufficient
thank you.
information for
Here's
this
contact there.
month. Thank you very much.
No
I
problem.
have another phone number question. A couple
Oh
weeks ago,
gosh,
someone
here we
from
go.
our office, tried to call the school, needed to talk to you about something, and they told us the number was disconnected. Can you explain that?
Oh, my gosh.
Which number is it that number up there, that 262 number?
Yeah, so,
Because they ever,
so,
I think we know about it.
Yeah, I emailed him, he called me back.
yes, so we looked into that. I don't know the time, this was a voice over IP, so it wouldn't have been disconnected, but, yeah, we looked into that, and I did call Ashley back, so,
When do you stop enrolling students? Are you gonna enroll students all year long? Is there a point you'll no longer, enroll a student because they're gonna be really far behind? Have you guys, do you have a date?
They've already stopped.
We do have enrollment cutoff dates, and so we have one for the fall and we have one for the spring. I do know that the high school, to answer that question for someone that was asking about high schools is a little bit earlier, just because they're on a block schedule, and so theirs doesn't quite extend into the same amount of term. And so we do have cutoff dates for that. That's why we have students that are ready to enroll for the spring. I do not remember the exact date of that enrollment date off top, though.
but answer your question, yes,
Sorry, Chairman.
All right,
I'm late
thank
for
you.
4 o'clock, I'm sorry, I gotta run.
All right, thank you all. See you next month. All right. At this time, we're going to go ahead and adjourn, and we'll see you back here at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Stephen,
Maybe we adjourn till tomorrow.
Second.
all in favor?